Hey everyone, and welcome to the inaugural video of our new Hate Watchers YouTube channel. Our goal with this channel is simple: wade through the vast sea of crap that movie and television studios keep throwing at us so you don't have to. Just kidding. Kind of. It's not all bad. Of course, we're going to give every show a fair shot, and to be clear, we desperately hope that each show isn't a load of crap. But sitting through full seasons of Halo and the Book of Boba Fett over the last year did not leave us with a lot of hope. So the next time one of your favorite childhood franchises is brought to the big screen or the small screen by a faceless corporation who butchers it and then calls you toxic for not liking it, know that you're not alone, and join us back here where we'll be ripping it to shreds. Because if we can't enjoy the show, let's at least have a little fun shitting on it. And with that out of the way, let's get to today's video. Oh, and it goes without saying, but spoilers ahead. House of the Dragon, based on the book Fire and Blood by George Railroad Martin, is the first prequel show to the events of Game of Thrones. Martin lovingly calls the show Hot D. Yes, seriously. In fact, Martin is really into Hot D. Hot D fills him with a sense of pride and joy, and he thinks of Hot D when the night is dark and full of terrors. I'm sorry. I really did want to leave that joke alone, but I'm just not able to. Getting back on track, House of D takes place 200 years before Game of Thrones, a period of time far, far away and safe from the events of Season 8. It promises to be a faithful retelling of Fire and Blood. The Targaryens have been on the Iron Throne for 100 years following the reign of Aegon the Conqueror, and the show will cover the Targaryen Civil War, known as the Dance of the Dragons, or Dance of the Ds, and everything that led up to it. The show has even promised to incorporate time jumps to just confuse the hell out of us. George Roadrunner Martin is supposed to be much more involved in this show than he was for seasons 6, 7, and 8 of Game of Thrones, which bodes well for fans of good writing. It does not bode well for fans of fart jokes and... So I can say that I am not the target audience here. With that background in mind, let's take a quick look at some of the power players we'll be seeing in this show. Let's start with the king and work our way down. King Viserys Targaryen. He's the ruler of Westeros at the start of Hot D, chosen by his grandfather, King Jaehaerys. Jaehaerys had a choice to make in naming his heir between Viserys and his other grandchild, Rhaenys. Eventually, Viserys was chosen because... penis, and Rhaenys was left to be known as the queen who never was. During his reign, Viserys has strived for peace and just wants everybody to be happy and get along. Viserys' brother, Daemon Targaryen, is the hot-headed leader of the City Watch. Daemon has ambitions and styles himself as Viserys' heir, but deep down Daemon does have a real love for his brother and really just wants approval. Oh, and by the way, Viserys' wife, Queen Aemma Targaryen, is pregnant, and Viserys is hoping for a boy to make the matter of his succession much more clear. For the time being, Rhaenyra Targaryen is King Viserys' only child. He wants to name Rhaenyra as his successor, but knows that doing so flies in the face of tradition, that the throne must be passed down through male heirs. Well, I'm sure everyone here is mature, and will find a peaceful way to resolve these conflicts. Moving out of the a little too pure Targaryen bloodline, we've got King Viserys' hand, Otto Hightower, the second son of the wealthy family who rules Old Town. As we'll see repeatedly, Otto doesn't like Daemon. Not a big surprise. Otto has his hand on the lever just as much as anyone, so let's keep our eye on this sneaky guy. Several seats over at the small council sits Corlys Velaryon. In the books, the Velaryon family is very closely related to the Targaryens, and that holds true in this retelling, as you can see with the close resemblance. Corlys is married to Rhaenys Targaryen and is known as the Sea Snake. The small council is rounded out by your typical manipulative maester, Grand Maester Mellos, and the aptly named Lionel Strong. And, there's one other guy at the table who's definitely in the running for the most forgettable human of 2022. Alicent Hightower is Rhaenyra's best friend, Daemon has a few conversations with some hooker, and every girl wants to get jousted by this knight. I'm probably forgetting a few people, but that's enough to get you through this video. Now on to the recap for Episode 1, The Heirs of the Dragon. We start off with a flashback to Viserys being begrudgingly chosen as Jaehaerys' heir over Rhaenys. I'm sure this won't be a wound that festers over time, and she'll get over it. Next, we get a great shot of a dragon flying over King's Landing, buzzing the Red Keep, and heading towards the Great Sept of Baelor. I don't know if they put this shot so early for this reason, but it's refreshing to see a fully grown dragon before we're 5 seasons into a show. Disembarking this dragon is Rhaenyra Targaryen, who is totally not just a copy of Daenerys, okay? Rhaenyra hops into a carriage with her best friend Alicent, and they hightail it to the Red Keep where Rhaenyra is late to pour wine for some old men. While just trying to do her job, King Viserys gives the young woman a hefty sniff. The king is too excited about the upcoming games planned to celebrate his imminent male heir to be concerned with a growing threat in the steppe zones and deteriorating domestic conditions. Rhaenyra finds Daemon sitting on the iron throne that belongs to her father, and he gives her a Valyrian steel necklace so the White Walkers won't be able to choke her. Then we see the maester and a male nurse inspecting a growing, festering wound on the king's back. The healthcare providers suggest cauterizing the wound. Wait a minute. Cauterize the wound? What happened to the whole "a dragon doesn't burn" thing? Are these Targaryens not true dragons? I mean, I get it for the Viserys from Game of Thrones, but these Targaryens sit on the Iron Throne and have like 20 dragons. So what exactly are the qualifications for being a true dragon? Did Daenerys misspeak? Did she mean Grand Dragon? Was Daenerys secretly super racist? That would certainly add a new layer to her character arc. I don't really get it, but whatever. Moving on. The king says the wound is from sitting on the throne and doesn't really care. He says, "I ain't got time to bleed," and leaves the room. Back in town, Daemon takes to the streets with his gold cloaks to just beat ass. I'm not exaggerating. They basically said, "Stop resisting," to everyone in the city and just beat the hell out of them. They cut off people's hands, nuts, and heads in that order. The small council isn't pleased with Daemon's actions, and he cares for their opinion about as much as you think he would. This quickly devolves into Daemon asking Otto Hightower, "Hey, how's your dead wife?" And everyone has a hearty laugh. With the business handled, it's time to play hard as the king kicks off the tournament and welcomes all the fighters and the unwashed masses. Everyone's having a good time while men are blasted off of horseback at high speeds. Prince Daemon makes his entrance to the tournament sporting the sickest armor we've seen in Game of Thrones. We're talking matte black metal, dragon scales, and a helmet with dragon wings and a dragon head complete with ruby eyes. To be fair, Lego did it first. He makes his way down the line and picks out his first opponent, who just so happens to be Otto Hightower's son. What are the odds? Daemon looks up to the stands and is like, "Yeah, Otto, you and your dead wife seeing this shit?" Daemon takes the worst of the first exchange during the joust, but remains on horseback. In the second pass, he just straight up cheats and lays out his lance in front of Hightower's horse, sending the rider flying. With Hightower horribly maimed, Daemon rides right over to the guy's sister and asks for her favor. If that isn't pimpin', I don't know what is. Elsewhere, Queen Aemma is screaming in agony as her labor carries on. A random bloody melee has broken out back at the games, and Jaden Smith is impressed. The Queen's labor isn't going too hot, and the Grand Maester recommends a C-section to save the child. Getting back to the important events, Daemon is set to joust against Sir Criston Cole of the Long Pole. Daemon loses the joust and decides it doesn't end there, and he charges Cole with his Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister in hand. Daemon celebrates too soon and is blindsided by Cole, who forces Daemon to yield. Sir Cole then matches Daemon's pimptitude and strolls over for Rhaenyra's favor. While everyone else is having fun in the sun, the queen dies after a boy is pulled from her mutilated abdomen. Ever the mama's boy, the son follows in his mom's footsteps and just dies, leading us to a seaside funeral with the mother and son laid on wooden pyres. The king looks on forlornly as Rhaenyra says the thing. Dracarys! Hold up again. What happened to the dragons not burning? Sure, the queen wasn't originally a Targaryen, but the son sure was. Whatever. I'm sure this will be a recurring theme throughout this show. Daemon makes some edgy, dead baby jokes in a brothel, and Otto's bitch ass turns snitch ass and tells them to Viserys. The king then commands Daemon to leave the city. Daemon tells Viserys,
"You're weak, Viserys."
And the king proves him wrong by immediately cutting himself on a chair. King Viserys now makes the obvious choice and anoints his only child, Rhaenyra, as his heir, and she accepts the fealty sworn to her by numerous lords. Then we see perhaps the only Stark we'll see in the show. While this is going on, we get the biggest reveal of the episode as Viserys passes on to Rhaenyra the true reason their ancestor Aegon Targaryen set out for Westeros. He tells her that Aegon had a vision of a terrible winter howling out of the north that brought with it death and despair, alluding to the White Walkers descending upon Westeros 300 years later. Aegon foresaw that only a Targaryen sitting on the throne could save the world of men, and his vision has been passed down to each Targaryen heir ever since. And there's a familiar name for this vision.
Aegon called his dream the Song of Ice and Fire.
Lastly, we see an uneasy Princess Rhaenyra accepting her new position, and the screen cuts to black, putting a hell of a bow on the first episode. Now, I'll be honest, I fully expected to come here and just rip on this show and pick it apart. I don't know exactly why I felt this, but I thought this show would feel small, cheap, and shallow compared to what we remember of Game of Thrones, and thus far it feels anything but. Even though we never left King's Landing, the world feels big and alive. The sets, costumes, and CGI are all polished, and the story's brimming with intrigue once you understand all of the players on the board. Much like the wildfire stewing underneath King's Landing, the first episode gave us an initial glimpse at the powder keg ready to be set off in this series. Now, the reveal at the end of the episode about Aegon's vision is extremely interesting because it gives us an entirely new lens through which to view the Targaryen dynasty and their decisions. There was a time in Rhaegar Targaryen's youth where he found an old text and seemingly changed overnight, telling others, quote, "It seems I must be a warrior." Daenerys had a vision of Prince Rhaegar saying of his child Aegon, presumably Jon Snow, quote, "His is the song of ice and fire." Even the Mad King Aerys may get a redemption arc. That wildfire underneath the city doesn't look so crazy now when you've known that these White Walkers are coming for 300 years. To wrap things up, I thought this episode gave us a bunch of things to look forward to, and I'm excited to see where this show goes, so stay tuned for our reviews of future episodes and go watch the episode for yourself. I doubt you'll be disappointed. We've reached the end of the video where we have to decide if this episode is a hate watch or a great watch, and I'm happy to say this is a great watch. I think this stays true to what Game of Thrones fans remember from the golden era of the original show from a different perspective than we had in Game of Thrones. We've got a ton of new houses and players to keep our eye on, and we've been promised that this batch of characters will be much less black and white in terms of good and evil, so there's just a ton to look forward to. Lastly, we are a new YouTube channel, so please like, subscribe, comment, all those things. We plan to cover the rest of this series, the new Lord of the Rings show, Andor, and many, many more shows and movies. So thanks for watching, stay tuned, and we'll catch you on the next one.